Good morning, ladies and germs. This is your Peachy update for the 26th. I don't know if you realize that this has happened, but Les Parnas exonerated President Trump. He absolutely did so. And the Democrats are too stupid to figure this out. You know, folks, at this point, we really are down to the Democrats thinking that you personally, every one of you, are a complete, flat-out idiot. If you are supporting impeachment at this point, you are not supporting impeachment because President Trump attempted to interfere with a political rival. Okay? You are supporting impeachment because you want Trump out of office and you don't give a rat's crap about how it happens. And that's the truth. And here's why. Parnas recorded, apparently, a dinner. Okay? And so this was a donor dinner when Trump, among other things, was talking about Yovanovitch. And the left is all running around with their hair on fire about this being such a terrible thing. And oh my God, we have this horrible problem. And, you know, Trump is such a monster, blah, 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 blah. And he's trying to get Biden, and Biden is a candidate for president of the United States. He's his political rival, and by God, we're going to... Folks, do you realize when it is that Joe Biden announced his candidacy? When was it that Joe Biden decided he was going to run for president? And may I remind you that up until the point that Joe Biden announced his candidacy for president, that Barack Obama had both publicly and privately been telling him not to run, that the common wisdom was that Barack Obama, who is a standard, up until this election season, was the standard bearer for the Democrat Party, okay, president of the United States for 2 terms, that he himself thought that Joe Biden would not be a good candidate. Now, we don't know exactly why President Obama thought that Joe Biden wouldn't be a good candidate, but I can come up with a half a dozen reasons. His knowledge of the corruption might be one of them. The other is the obvious, his age and his kind of doddering thing. Then there's the creep factor, and the creep factor is very, very large. I don't know how anybody thinks that Joe Biden should run for president of the United States with the decades-long creep factor that the guy has. I mean, if there wasn't the Ukraine thing, you could tattoo the guy with that stuff. I mean, that's just the kind of... folks, I don't think that necessarily anything illegal there, but I'll tell you what, that guy is a creepy SOB. All right, and would you want your 8 or 10-year-old daughter hanging around where that guy is? You know, just that's enough, isn't it? I think it is. It would be for me. So anyway, the creep show factor is a huge deal. There's nothing that can be done about it. It's just who Biden is. And I think that we need to have a little bit of come to Jesus on this, because the facts are that the timing that you have here it makes it impossible for President Trump to have interfered with Joe Biden, the candidate, because President Trump was after Joe Biden and the situation in the Ukraine and the corruption over a year before Joe Biden was a candidate. All right, so the whole election interference, it's just a load of bullshit, folks. And by the way, as I have pointed out, declaring yourself a candidate to the United States, whether it be for president, whether it be for Senate, whether it be for anything else, declaring yourself as a candidate for high office does not eliminate or exonerate or somehow give you a pass for whatever evil things you might have done in the past. It just doesn't, and that's just the way it is. All right, so even if you could make the argument it's bullshit, but you can't get there from here. And those are just the facts of the matter. And I understand that there's people who just won't accept this, but it doesn't matter whether you accept it. Facts are facts. Okay. It's just, it is what it is. Let's just cut the bullshit and go on. All right. So enough of the impeachment thing. Parnas essentially blew up the entire Democratic argument for impeachment on the basis of attempting to interfere in the 2020 election campaign. So now what do you have left, folks? I mean, let's get down to reality here and talk about what's really there. There's no there. It's gone. It's over. All right, next up. And this I think is kind of interesting. This is the coronavirus thing. and we're going to spend the rest of the podcast on this. And I'm going to try to keep it a little briefer than some of the others. The update as of this morning is that we have about 2,000 now confirmed cases. As of last night when I went to bed, it was about 1,400. That is a very large increase. It's 600 overnight. And by the way, that's approaching a 30 to 40% increase. And now these are confirmed cases. All right. Now that's people who they've done serology on and actually know that this is what's going on. The reports coming out of China are that there are tens of thousands, perhaps as many as 100,000 in Wuhan alone, people that are infected. The thing is, we don't have a huge number of deaths at this point. We have supposedly about 50 or thereabouts that have died from this. And to put context on this thing, there are 80,000 deaths approximately in the United States caused by seasonal flu every year. And those caused bys include all the secondary pneumonia infections, which is what kills almost everybody who dies from the flu. If, in fact, you have a compromised immune system, that is, you're older than 65 or thereabouts, because your immunity starts to decline about then, or if you're very young, typically people are younger than 5 or 6, and especially if you've led a sheltered life because you're one of those spoiled brats that we have in America. It's the majority of the people in America. You're a kid and you don't go run and play in the dirt and come back looking like a mud pie every afternoon when you're home with one of your parents raising you because you go to these petri dishes called daycares. And oh my God, we cannot allow children to actually get terribly dirty. Oh no, we can't do that. We have to keep them clean and all this hand sanitizers and everything. If you are one of those kids, then you're in a lot of trouble because your immune system is not well developed. And by the way, this is not just about coronavirus. Let me point something else out to you. It has been established that wealthy families have a higher incidence of leukemia. We now know how leukemia more or less works. Leukemia is both a genetic susceptibility and an immune triggering situation where your immune system goes crazy. And that's what cancer is always, is that your immune system fails to recognize a cancerous cell or actually helps it instead of doing what it should do, which is destroy it. And leukemia has both a genetic susceptibility and an infectious component. The infectious component is one that has to be triggered, and you are much, much less likely to get it if your immune system has been aggressively exposed in your young childhood. Well, guess what? The richer you are, the less likely that is. All right, sorry, folks, for all you parents, all you mothers and doddering, whatever, who are, oh my God, Johnny can't play outside because he'll get all dirty, and oh, that's terrible. And, hey, listen, I got some news for you, folks. Kids are wash and wear. Okay, they really do, and when they're really young and they get all messy, well, I won't tell you the story about spaghetti and high chairs and sheets on the kitchen floor. Let's just say that pretty much anything that a kid gets into, you could throw said kid in the tub and it washes off. Of course, there's exceptions, poisons and things like this, but. But for the most part, kids are wash and wear. That's the way that they always have been throughout history, and they seem to do quite well when that's how they live and play when they're in their younger years. And it tends to be protective for a number of things, including, believe it or not, things like leukemia, which is sort of a shock because you wouldn't think it would be that way, but it is. So yeah, if you're in that basket, you got a problem. We have not yet seen any kind of exponential expansion here in the United States. In other words, the ramp factor for this virus is not yet gotten in the U.S. We've had a couple of isolated cases. You must expect that it eventually will. I'm worried about R0 or R0. We do not know exactly what that is yet. The Chinese probably have a very good idea. I have seen a number of projections on it. The latest projections that I'm seeing are anywhere from the low 2 points, 2 dot, to somewhere in the mid-3s. Now, to put perspective on that, the average seasonal flu typically tends to run about 1.4 and 1.3, 1.4 in that general range. And that's plenty for it to circulate and get a lot of people over the space of, the wintertime. because you tend to be more congregated together, and the drier air makes you more susceptible to picking it up and the virus being able to get through your mucous membranes and things like this. But if in fact this one is in the 2s, that's very bad. If it's in the 3s, it's going to spread like an absolute wildfire. There's going to be no stopping it. So we do not know where R0 is. You have to expect at this point that it's going to get into the United States. And we haven't seen it yet, but the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think you're going to get a pretty good handle on exactly how well contained it'll be in terms of keeping it out of here and out of Europe. My guess is the answer is not well at all. All right, one final point. Those of you running around buying surgical face masks on eBay and Amazon and whatever, and now you've got people jacking up the prices and taking advantage of this. Please don't do that. For a couple of reasons. Number one, and the most important, is it's ineffective. If you wish to buy a surgical mask, please understand what surgical masks are for. They are not to prevent you, the surgeon that is wearing the mask, from inhaling viral particles that happen to be expelled by somebody else in the vicinity. A surgical mask's purpose is to prevent the surgeon from infecting the person who is laying on the table while he's operating on him or her, because said surgeon is probably going to have his face over the top of the open part of the body, and any particles that person discharges out of his mouth or nose has a very high probability of going directly inside said other person and causing an infection. So the purpose of the mask is not to prevent the surgeon from contracting whatever the patient has. It's the other way around. So the person wearing the mask gets a decent amount of filtration of what they expel. And the reason is a surgical mask does not seal around the sides of your face. All right. However, the droplets that come out of your mouth and nose get caught by the fabric on the inside. If you want protection against things in the environment coming into your body, you want an N95. All right, and those are typically what are used when you're working in a dusty environment where you don't want to inhale the dust. Let's say you're out in your garage sanding, and there's all kinds of sawdust flying around, and you obviously don't want to inhale that because it's very bad for you. So you'd wear an N95. Now, an N95, properly fitted and worn, does seal on your inhales and has an exhale valve. All right, so then you also have to pay attention to how you wear it, you place it correctly on your face, and that it seals around the sides, which means if you have facial hair, you need to make sure it's shaved off, all right, because otherwise it's not going to seal with crap. And secondly, the other thing about that is that when you take it off, you have to make very sure that whatever contamination might be on the outside doesn't end up on the inside. So at absolute minimum, you need to have unbroken skin on your fingers. That's very difficult to do. Most of us have multiple places on our hands where we have minor breaks in our skin. All right, so it's totally normal, especially in the wintertime, because you tend to have drier skin and little cracks and stuff. So you probably want to be wearing either vinyl or latex gloves when you take the thing off and discard it. And then you need to immediately wash your hands. Okay. Good hygiene, in other words, modern, hand washing on a regular basis. Really good idea. But if you think that you're going to prevent transmission with surgical masks, you're out of your effing mind. There is a lot of people that are jacking up the prices and selling them for crazy amounts. Folks, look, if you're sick and you're trying to prevent getting everybody else in your house sick, you might succeed with that. Okay? What you're not going to do is avoid contracting it from somebody else wearing one of those things. Again, and N95s, folks, listen, I use them when I'm, doing sanding work or, woodworking or whatever around, particulate matter that I don't want to inhale. Those things are not comfortable to wear for long periods of time. If you're going to wear one for a short period of time, that's a different story. But if you think that masking up and going around your daily business like nothing else is going on is something you're going to enjoy, I got news for you. You are not going to enjoy it. You may not enjoy it at a level of being unwilling to do it. And, it only takes once, right? So these are some things to think about. Give some consideration to it. Don't run around like your hair's on fire today. I don't think that there's any evidence that that's going to be helpful. But do keep this kind of thing in mind, and keep your eyes on the U.S. cases, because that we can actually prevent a move into the United States. It's just not going to happen. But on the other hand, I think that whether it's time to pull the alarm bell has a lot to do with whether or not the deaths continue to be ones that are mostly pneumonia related. If they stay that way, and we don't see direct organ damage from the virus itself, then I'm a lot less concerned. You're very likely to get sick. Spanish flu, folks, about a third of the population of the planet ultimately got it. Okay, so this is something to think about. You're odds about 30% that you're going to get this thing if it turns out to be that kind of a virus. And of those people who get it, 2 or 3% are probably going to die. But unless you are elderly or very young, your odds of dying are, assuming you get it, are well under 1%. All right. So now this again assumes that we don't start seeing deaths from cytokine storms and things like that. If we do, then now you got to think about pulling the alarm bell. But for right now, I think watchful waiting in the United States is a good idea. But do think about what you're going to do if you have to essentially self-isolate, because that is going to be the only real defense mechanism if this thing gets going here in the U.S. I'm your ticker guy, and that's how it is.